Hi, and welcome back to David Pattinson's Accused Friends. Today I wanted to talk about a case that I read about in the Sun newspaper, and it was regarding the Watford striker, Watford Football Club striker Joao Pedro, who's 18 years old, and he was dating a girl from Brazil who is 15 years old. And the article was talking about how this girl was below the age of sexual consent in Britain, which is 16 years old. And there's no allegation from me that there was any sexual activity with him and this girl. But, I wanted to tell you what I know, and I wanted to talk about comparing it to the case of Adam Johnson from 2016, who was another football player playing for Sunderland, and he was convicted of sexual activity with a 15-year-old girl, and he was given a 6-year prison sentence. And I wanted to talk about, well, if Adam Johnson's given a six-year prison sentence, surely Joao Pedro should be given a 6-year prison sentence if his crime is the same. So all I really know about this is that this Joao Pedro guy is a Brazilian player. He's playing in England, but his native country is in Brazil, and he's got this girlfriend, Mel, who lives in Brazil, who's from Brazil. And the article was sort of explaining that the sexual consent age in Brazil is 14, but in Britain it's 16. And it seems like that Pedro invited Mel over to London over the Christmas period, and there was photographs of them in London on Blackfriars Bridge, and they were kissing, and there was sort of some intimate touching and all this sort of stuff. And the article was trying to say, look, because there's this age of consent in Brazil, it's sort of, there's these cultural differences and there's legal differences in Brazil. But of course, they're in London, they're in Britain. So, should these people be conforming to British law when they're in Britain or not? And obviously this is kind of a sensitive topic in the football world, bearing in mind what happened to Adam Johnson. And so Watford Football Club got involved. Instead of going to the police to say, look, our striker might be having underage sex or sexual activity with an underage girl, they instead went to the press to try and diffuse the story. And they said, look, Joao Pedro and his girlfriend are acutely aware of the law in Great Britain, and this girl's gone home back to Brazil, and she won't be returning here till after her 16th birthday. And it's like, well, what's the problem? If there's no criminal behaviour when she's here underage, why does she have to stay away until she's at the age of 16? So it kind of implies that there was underage sexual activity this time. And if that was the case, should Joao Pedro be given a 6-year prison sentence like Adam Johnson was? And I want to remind people in the Adam Johnson case, he's obviously an English player, Englishman, grew up in Britain. And the judge in the Adam Johnson case was keen to point out that Johnson is a football player, he's a role model. And so, by him having underage sexual activity with a female fan, that was a very bad thing, and a precedent had to be set for him, which was why he had this kind of 6-year prison sentence. He did get out after 3 years, and he's out of prison now, but this is the sentence that was handed down to him at the time. And also what we've heard about a lot recently with this Jeffrey Epstein stuff that's been in the case is about sex trafficking. Epstein was trafficking these girls. He was paying for them to fly from one legal jurisdiction to another for sexual activity and sexual relations with him and his friends. And this sex trafficking stuff is portrayed as being a significant crime. And so I want to ask the question, well, who bought Mel's plane ticket from Brazil to Britain? Was it Joao Pedro? Was it one of Joao Pedro's friends or managers? Was it with his money? And is there a sex trafficking element to this case that has not been raised? So not only is there potentially sexual activity with a minor, with him being an adult, there's also a sex trafficking element which wasn't there in Adam Johnson's case. And would this theoretically extend his prison sentence if he was convicted of this crime. Now, as far as I'm aware, there's really been no police follow-up on this. It doesn't appear like Watford's reported it to the police. Maybe the police are looking into it and figuring out where she stayed. It'd be pretty easy to find out who bought the plane ticket, and it'd be pretty easy to find out where she stayed, whether there's any sexual activity going on with Joao Pedro or not, I don't know. They were kissing. I don't know if that's sexual touching or what it is. But I do think maybe someone should look into this. I mean, we've had a lot of talk from Sky Sports this season about racism and how fans that commit racist acts, according to Gary Neville, should be given lifetime bans from the game. And you know, if that's the precedent, that's the precedent. But what about centre forwards having sexual relations with underage girls and involved in sex trafficking across international boundaries? Should they be given lifetime bans? Or is it, as I've speculated before, you know, one rule for fans and another rule for players that are major financial assets to these clubs? And so I think people will probably be looking at this video and saying, well, look, David, Adam Johnson's white, Joao Pedro is black or is kind of, brown skin. He's from Brazil. So there's one set of laws for Adam Johnson, and there's another set of laws for Joao Pedro. And people will say, well, look, David, racism has nothing to do with the criminal justice system. And I want to show you the Times newspaper here from January 18th, 2020. This has been on my desk for a couple of weeks, and I'll just hold it up here. I hope you can see it. The headline on the front right here says, Police Chief, we ignored sex abuse of children. And then it said here, race fears stopped us acting, victim's father told. So police are obviously concerned about prosecuting people of minority races because they'll be accused of racism. So maybe that's the situation in the Joao Pedro case. The police are afraid to say, okay, well, although this may be identical to the Adam Johnson case, minus the sex trafficking element, which is an additional charge, we don't want to be accused of racism, and so we're not going to pursue it. And the journalist for The Sun who wrote this article is a guy called Richard Forrester. You could look it up online. And I emailed him and said, look, can you do a follow-up article with, what's going on with the police investigation, how this compares to Adam Johnson? And, unsurprisingly, there's been no response from them. So the media want to report this case as if it's just some sort of minor thing. But then when it's a British person or a white Caucasian person involved in the same incident, it's this big blown up story, and Adam Johnson's this evil guy and highly deserving of a prison sentence, whereas Joao Pedro is not. Final thing I want to say on this is the role of Adidas. During the Adam Johnson incident, he had a boot deal with Adidas, and they were paying him $10,000 a year to wear the Adidas boots. And they came out after his conviction and said, look, we can't condone sexual activity with minors. We totally want to distance ourselves from Adam Johnson, and we're cancelling the boot deal. And of course, I looked up online and thought, well, I wonder what boots Joao Pedro wears. And, I found a picture and he's got the old Adidas boots on. So I wonder if maybe the police don't prosecute this, Adidas will at least come out and have the same standard with Pedro as they have with Adam Johnson, saying that we don't condone sexual activity with a minor in any way. And I'm not saying this sexual activity happened in Great Britain, but that's why I'm encouraging the police to look into it. But obviously, if it has, will Adidas have the same position with Pedro as they had with Johnson? So I hope this video provides food for thought. Hope this case can be looked into further so we can get some clarity. And thank you again for watching David Pattinson's Accused Friends.